Procrastinophobic. Hi, it's Ramdane. You are on Procrastinophobic, the pseudo radio show, the show that interviews people who do things. I'm usually interviewing designers, musicians, people from the art world. But for the first time, I wanted to invite someone that I discovered on social media, and I'm a fan of his work, his ideas. He's coming directly from Santiago de Chile, and is originally Indian. Vijay Prashad, welcome to this show.
It's my pleasure to be here in your very, very interesting office, atelier, coffee shop,
Everything.
design studio, boxing palace, everything.
And a podcast studio.
Well, that's where we are, exactly. Podcast studio.
It's funny to have you here. You're just passing by. And I saw your face, I think, for the first time. As far as I remember, it was about this Indian revolution that with like farmers. Who are you? What do you do? First, where are you born?
I was born in Calcutta, which is a tremendous city in eastern India, in West Bengal. My parents, very ambitious for me in some ways, called me Vijay, which means victory. I'm not sure how many victories I've had in my life, but from pretty early on, I knew that I liked stories. I like collecting stories. I like telling stories. I like helping other people's stories get more widely listened to, read, and so on. So if I was to describe myself, I would say I'm a storyteller, but I'm also a purveyor of stories. I'm a seller of stories. I come to your house, knock on your door and say, I have a story for you. Sometimes it's my story, sometimes it's somebody else's story.
What's your parents were doing?
My parents were interesting people. My father was involved in all kinds of things. He was a tough guy.
What is a tough guy?
He was the kind of guy, if somebody tried to steal from him, he would hit them. He was an unusual man. He commanded respect. You ask me, what was your dad's profession? My dad commanded respect. That was his profession. He was like a kind of mafia, I mean.
And your mom?
My mother was a most incredible person. Neither of my parents had much education, but they had a lot of commitment to the world. I'll give you an example, Ramdane. When I was a little boy, you have a birthday and your neighbors, your friends, family give you presents. It's a normal thing, but not in my household. In my household, the presents would arrive, not huge, but quite a number. And then I couldn't open them. In the evening, we'd go to my parents' room and they'd say, here, son, are the 21 presents. We're going to divide them into 3 piles, 7 presents each. Okay, but before you open it, so you don't know what's in the boxes or packages. So there's 7 presents in each pile. Pile number 1, we're going to put into a box and keep it in our room. And during the year, when you're feeling sad or if you've done something good, you get to look at a present. The second pile, you can open now. The third pile, we're going to put in another box. And tomorrow morning, your mother and you are going to go to the local slum and you're going to give these presents to the children there. So you can imagine me as a little boy thinking, okay, look, fine. I'm not going to argue with you about the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 distribution. But for God's sake, can I at least see what I'm giving away? Can I choose? And for them, of course, the whole point was that I didn't decide, I don't like that, I'm going to give it away. The whole point was, son, you have to live with values that suggest that things that you don't necessarily want to give away, you should share with somebody. Because the point is to teach you to become a person of generosity, a person who takes other people's feelings, desires, hurt into you. You're not doing this out of charity. You're doing this out of humanity. Because when you give away things you don't want, that's charity. When you give away things that you might want, that's humanity. So when you ask me, what are your parents like? My parents basically taught me values. even though they were not people of great learning. There were not many books in the house and so on. But they taught me with great feeling how to be a human being.
It's very strange because your father seems to be a tough guy, but he taught you that.
Because tough guys want respect. And let's not forget this particular fact that, in fact, our leaders nowadays have forgotten this. They think they can demand respect. So somebody like Emmanuel Macron, a mediocre, imbecilic, cartoonish character, thinks that because he's the president of a country, you should respect him. But respect is something that has to be earned. Respect has to be part of your shining light inside you. In Arabic, the word is baraka. It's the light inside you. When you have baraka, when you have charisma, other people respect you. If you're just a piece of shit on the road, people want to avoid you. If they get some of it stuck on their shoe, it's terrible for them. They don't want a part of you. Our leaders today in the world, they are like a piece of shit on the road. You should try to avoid them, but you get stuck with them. And the smell of them is carried for the rest of the day from the bottom of your shoe. But my father and people of his generation, they believed that respect had to be earned. Yeah. You earn respect with love, man. You have to treat people with decency. You can be a tough guy, but you still need people to love you, And they only love you if you behave like a human being.
Pseudo Radio.
All I'm asking for is just a little respect when I get home. Yeah, when I get home. Yeah. You can do me wrong while I'm gone. You can do me wrong if you want. Oh, I'm asking for just a little respect when I get home. Yeah, when I get home.
Did you have siblings?
Yes. They're all older than me. I was the youngest. Brother is 19 years older than me. Sister is 18 years older than me, and the other one is about 7 years older. We were 4. But by the time the last comes along, there are a couple of advantages of the last child, particularly with a big stretch. Parents are exhausted. They don't want to really parent you like they parented the older ones. By the time the last one comes, they treat you like a grandchild. I often felt like a grandchild in the house rather than a child. My mother was 38 years old when I was born. In the old days, it was old.
Very old. My mother had me at 19,
That's right. My mother had her first child at 18. So by the time I show up when she's 38, in the old days, I was born in 1967, that was, not common to have a child, not to have a first child. Now, there were people in my neighborhood, you were the 10th child, and the mother was 38. That was there. But the old days, now, even in my neighborhood now, people are not having 10 children anymore.
What was your childhood? What were your days? Like, you were in a very poor family, middle class, educated, your parents had books at home, I don't know. And when I mean poor, it's not just a question of money, it's cultural poor.
No, we were not a poor family at all. Again, my father was an extremely accomplished person in his own way, but, they were both born in the 1920s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so by the 1940s, when they were in their 20s, when they were college age and so on, that was the high point both of World War II and of the freedom movement in India. So neither of my parents actually had education. My mother didn't finish her school and my father didn't go to college. They didn't have a degree. After World War II ended, my father went to work in the docks in Calcutta as a clerk. So, in our house when I was a kid, there were books, but they were not systematic books. There was like semi-pornographic James Hadley Chase, for instance, novels quite racy novels with semi-naked women on the cover, sitting right next to a collection of American encyclopedias that somebody must have sold my father. But, they didn't know a lot of, they couldn't have told me systematically read things and so on. But I had two advantages. One is that my parents, particularly my father, was extremely curious. So he would read the newspaper every day. And because I was the young kid and I was very interested in reading, I read everything in the bookshelf. I used to go out to the local lending library on our street. Old India was amazing because every street, somebody would have a lending library, where they would gather books together, and some of it wasn't great. There was a guy who used to have a lending library of comics, but he was a pedophile. So he wanted the kids to come in, and so it's not paradise, okay? It was weird sometimes, and we were always told, don't go into that lending library. But, he had all the comics. He had Asterix and Obelix and, war comics and the Commando comics, and I was dying to go in there.
I can do a movie with the story of the pedophile.
Come on, everybody said, don't go in there, or go in there in groups of 5 or 6. But, I read a lot. So my father would read the newspaper and he would say, blah, 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 something, Thomas Sankara.
What kind of papers? Because if it was Sankara, it was maybe very lefty paper.
No, it would be just the regular newspaper in our city, the main newspaper. But, they'd have stories about places in the international page, Azerbaijan, just names, words. He used to call me, pull out this terrible encyclopedia. It was called a Claxton Encyclopedia. Terrible. I mean, just one of the cheap American encyclopedias. And he would ask me to read the whole entry to him. No. So I would sit there in the afternoon reading about Azerbaijan. And I learned so many things about the world just reading to my father. It was amazing. The other thing was that in our neighborhood, this was still the time when the Soviet Union was there. So the Soviet embassy, the consul, it had a place called Gorky Sadan, or the Cultural Institute of the Consulate. And they used to go around the city and set up tables just like we have between us and put Progress Publisher books and sell them. There were children's books, beautifully illustrated books, so cheap. You can't imagine what the Soviet Union did for us as children. Cheap books about Russian fairy tales, really cheap, beautiful illustrations.
In Indian.
In Hindi, yeah. And Bengali, four color illustration, lavish. For nothing we could buy them. And also I bought Tolstoy. I became an enormous reader as a kid of Tolstoy. My favorite book was Tolstoy's Resurrection. Ordinary Progress Publisher, so cheap. Couldn't have afforded books otherwise. And that experience of being able to buy good quality literature.
We never heard about soft power from USSR. Never heard about Soviet soft power. And now I'm just listening, discovering a whole world.
No, Ramdane, it was amazing because it wasn't just Russian books. For instance, there's a very important Chinese short story writer. Her name is Ding Ling. Ding Ling went into the countryside around the time of the Chinese Revolution and wrote stories about ordinary people. People worrying about, well, I have my daughter, is she going to get married? The worries of the peasants was Ding Ling's stories. Well, how was I, a young boy in Calcutta, India, going to ever even hear about Ding Ling? The Soviets translated Ding Ling's Chinese stories into Bengali and sold them in India, in Hindi, in Tamil, and so on. So this is the amazing power of Soviet publishing. And I knew from a very early age that if I, as a young boy in Calcutta, can get access to this, I want to spend part of my life helping other people find out about things in other countries. Why should somebody in Palestine, let's say today, even in the middle of the genocidal Israeli bombing, why can't a Palestinian child read a short story? Why should a Palestinian only know suffering? We want Palestinian children to read beautiful books. We want them to read fairy tales from India, fairy tales from Russia. We want culture to go everywhere, to everybody's heart, because people must not be condemned to live in a world of deprivation. And what's happened in a lot of people who want to make things better in the world is they think the way we make things better is we get somebody a meal. If they can eat, they're okay. They don't understand that you don't exit from poverty just by eating. You exit from poverty by expanding your mind, by culture, by your heart, by learning about other people, and those books, Tolstoy, what a great storyteller. For a kid to sit with no lights because we had lots of power cuts, sit near the window until the evening light disappeared, reading Tolstoy, bring a candle to finish the chapter, mother yelling, don't read in the dark, you'll go blind. Me thinking, I don't know.
So.
Yeah, because you see, this is their thing. And I'm thinking in my head, I remember this thought as a young boy thinking, but if I don't read, I'll be blind.
Keep your ears wide open. This is Procrastinophobic.
I'm living in the future. I feel wonderful. I'm tipping over backwards. I'm so ambitious. I'm looking back. I'm running a race, and you're the book I read. So feel my fingers as they touch your arms. I'm spinning around and I feel alright. The book I read was in your eyes. Ooh, na 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 na.
Your parents grew up under the power of English, like during colonial time. Do they share that with you?
Of course they did. I mean, now my father was born in 1923. So when the British left India, my father was already a grown man. He was 24 years old. So he had a full experience of British colonialism. My family had a very strange relationship with colonialism because, many of them, my great-grandfather was a postmaster. In that sense, he worked for the British government. But in what way did he work for the government? He was a postmaster. He managed the postal in a place in Punjab. So they had this strange relationship with the colonial state. And yet that great feeling of anger at being dominated. My father was an enormous, ambitious man for India. He wanted India to be a modern country. He hated landlords. He hated the idea of corruption and so on. Sometime in the early 1950s, my father was then working in the Indian government in the mining sector. And they sent my parents with some other people to Japan in the early 1950s to sell Indian coal in Japan. And I remember many years later, my father arguing with me because I had then become, a leftist and I was all about revolutions and things. And my father said to me, look, the point is you have to build industry. And we should learn from the Japanese. And I said, what do you mean learn from the Japanese? They had a fascist history. And you know how when I was young, I was super fiery. And he said, no, listen. I went to Japan 6 years after Hiroshima. In Japan, they were saying, how do we become the greatest country in the world? And he said, why can't we have that attitude in India? Why are we always thinking about our suffering? We must use our suffering as a resource to build something great. These people were incredible people, Ramdane, these earlier generations.
I'm more like your dad. I like, let's stop complaining, like move on. Let's create things. Let's make this world better instead of complaining. You were good in school or not?
The question of good at school is not a straightforward question because what does one mean good at school? There are two ways to judge that, correct? One is, did you get good marks in school while you were there? Or did you set the foundation for the rest of your life, right? There are two ways to judge how good you are at school. I didn't necessarily get the best marks in school. I was not great at paying attention in class or doing that kind of thing. But I know that I learned a lot in school. I learned, for instance, to read properly, systematically. I was very interested in theater. I was interested in music. I was interested in all the things that were around my school life. I learned how to deal with other people from different backgrounds.
You are mixed with poor people and middle class?
Wide mixing. In those days in India, it was much more class mixed than now, where things are much more segregated. and difficult, therefore, to raise children with a broader perspective. Children are raised now in their class, and they get really detached from the rest of the world. But what I'd say is, make it. How does one make it? What I found interesting is, I never thought I want to make it. Or I never had that.
What do you mean by make it?
It's a good question.
Making money, it's very dumb. Making a career, it's very dumb. I don't understand this word, making it.
The question is, what is your ambition? What do you want to do in your life? Do you want to make a mark? Do you want to contribute to something? It takes time for a young person. It takes a lot of time for a young person to figure out what their ambition is. What are you good at? How can you contribute to something? I well remember being a young person thinking, you know what? I am good at some things. I like to communicate things to people. I very much like being in plays. I like to be an actor. I loved boxing. I thought boxing was an art form for me. It's not a violent sport. It's misunderstood because no boxer goes into the ring wanting to destroy somebody. Boxer goes into the ring wanting to win through their skill, not by anger. You can't fight with anger. That's not boxing. That's violence. You got to manage and control the depth and breadth of your emotions, And so I well remember learning that. I was never interested in money, okay, because I didn't see the point of it, because you look around in society, right? You see people with a lot of money, but they still look pretty sad, they don't look happy. I wanted to live everyday life happy. If you asked me when I was young, what do you want to do with your life? I want to wake up in the morning and be excited about what I want to do today. I want to go to sleep not fully, but pretty satisfied about what I did today. Look forward to the next day. Satisfaction that I've actually done something that I want to do, that I have things I want to do. I don't just want to go to work. I don't want the end point to be money. I don't want the end point to be, a project that's completed. When I'm coming near the completion of a project, I'm already working on 10 different things. There never is. Sometimes my friends say, why don't you take a holiday? Like, finish something, take a holiday. I'm like, man, I don't even understand what a holiday is because every day for me is a holiday. I love doing what I do. And what I would say, and I say this to a lot of young people, is look for what's inside you that makes you happy in your life. What's happened in capitalism, in the system we live in, is majority of people work and they feel like their retirement is their nirvana. When I retire, then I'm going to enjoy my life. I work all these years. It's a shit life. I have this job I hate.
It's called the carrot in French.
The carrot is over there. Retirement. Or those 2 weeks or 10 days of vacation. You're spending terrible... my vacation.
To give motivation to everyone.
What about if every day we could think of interesting things to do? When I have this discussion with young people will say, hey, listen, but what about the person removing your garbage? You can't expect them to want to do that. Well, then we have to ask questions in society. Is it a good idea to have somebody permanently clean your building or whatever? Do we want to have for them a way to have different parts of their day? Do we want to share things? Like, is it a good idea for me just to be writing? Shouldn't I once in a while get up and clean the windows or do some activity? They always say, oh no, you can never enjoy your life. You can only wait for retirement. And I think that thinking kills the human spirit. We should always struggle to make everybody's lives happy. Happiness is the ultimate goal of being alive.
What is happiness for you?
Eudaimonia. It's a great Greek word. I mean, happiness it's not like drinking a glass of water. Happiness is different. It's also subjective. Depends on what different people want. You can't impose an idea. Like, I can't say to somebody, my happiness is to wake up and say, oh, I can't wait to get to this project. Maybe you have a different idea of happiness,
It's a bit the same. Sometimes you're on this project and it doesn't work like you want.
No, but that's part of your ambition, isn't it? I mean, you should never think of happiness related to success. I learn more from failure than from success. One must always learn. There's never a point in life where you say, my happiness is something that is indexed to success, that when I succeed, I'm happy. No, sometimes when something doesn't work, I think, it's a puzzle. I can now work on why is it not working. That also makes me happy.
Are you happy right now?
I am very happy right now.
Be happy. Listen to what I say. In your life, expect some trouble. But when you worry, you make it double. Don't worry. Be happy. Be happy now. Don't worry. Be happy. Don't worry, be happy.
When you see your life, when you see what you achieve, what you're doing every day, are you happy?
I can't believe that I live the life I live right now. No, I'm serious. I travel all over the place because people find useful things for me to do. I'll go to Accra, I'll go to Tunis, I'll go all over the place. Why? People say, oh, can you come and we'll work on this thing together, or let's work. I'm going to Accra. We're doing a collection of writings of the great Kwame Nkrumah.
In Ghana?
In Ghana.
Are you the connector of what I call the Afro-Asiatic world? When I mean Afro-Asiatic, I include also South America, which is the Browns. I call them the Browns.
The Browns?
The border of the brown world is just under America. You include Mexico, the south part of Mediterranean, and you go to Japan, actually, the Browns. Are you the guy who tried to connect all this brown world on the lefty side?
Well, the institute I run is called Tri-Continental, and the three continents being Asia, Africa, and the Americas. So, in fact, that is, if I could say, my job. My job is basically to try to bring understanding among people's movements, whether it's, for instance, we just worked to publish something in the state of Karnataka in India, where the People's Science Movement creates fairs called the Joys of Learning Festival, where they have thousands of fairs in villages, and children come and they do interesting things. One of the things they do is they take a bicycle and they take it apart and put the bicycle pieces on the floor. And then hundreds of children come and they try to figure out how to put the bicycle together. The kid that does it gets to take the bicycle home. So this is called a Joy of Learning Festival.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thousands of them in the state of Kerala. So we did a text. This is the state of Karnataka. I misspoke. It's not a communist state, Karnataka. Kerala is. They border each other. But in Karnataka, which is a state ruled by a right-wing government, still...
Right-wing?
Yes.
Like Modi people?
That kind of thing.
I don't understand the Kerala. I don't understand why it's so lefty.
It is.
Historically, why it's so communist?
Well, it's fortunate that because Kerala is a coastal area...
It's a front of Sri Lanka.
Yeah, it's just north of Sri Lanka on the southwest of India. It's a coastal state. It's largely a coastline. And therefore, firstly, it has hundreds of years of trading with the Arab world and with Africa. Hundreds of years of trading. In fact, the old king of Kerala used to be known as Samudra Raja, the king of the sea. They used to be trading with the Arabs that go back to like the year 100. In fact, one of the apostles of Jesus, St. Thomas, comes to Kerala and then to Madras before Christianity goes to Europe. Christianity comes to India. St. Thomas dies outside today's Chennai, Madras. There's a little mountain called St. Thomas Mount where he was killed. But he comes to India before the Pope, before Christianity in Europe. Christianity in India is very old. So there are lots of so-called Syrian Christians in Kerala.
They're still Christian.
Syrian Christians. They follow the Syrian church. Yeah. So, the thing is that actually creates a cosmopolitan culture in Kerala, very old. Then secondly, in the 19th century, there was a social reform movement against caste. All of this sets up the precondition for the emergence of the socialist and communist movement in the 1920s. There was a pretty extraordinary communist by the name of E.M.S. Namboodiripad who led the communist movement in Kerala. But if you look at Kerala, it's this cosmopolitan Indian Ocean linkage. then the old social reform movement. These things are not there in the north of India or other places where you have a much more wretched social structure. And you can't build communism in an unequal social landscape. You have to attack unequal social worlds. You've got to attack a monarchy, for instance, and so on. And Kerala that way was fortunate. But just to come back to this Joy of Learning festival in Karnataka, can you imagine a little kid comes and sees the parts of a bicycle, right? It sparks their curiosity. They learn about gears, not because somebody teaches them, tells them, this is a bicycle, this is a gear, this is the gear shaft, that's a brake. No, you have to look and learn by doing. And they put it, and the one who puts it together takes it home. It's a huge incentive. So we wrote a text about this. Now, why am I interested in that? I want this text to be read in Portuguese in Brazil by the landless workers movement, because then they might think, wow, we can start doing Joy of Learning festivals in the state of Para. For me, the whole point of connecting is connecting the best parts of the work we are doing. It's not just connecting for the sake of it, but to teach people, say, hey, listen, they figured out something over there. It's what NGOs call best practices. I don't like the way NGOs function. I don't like the term best practice, but there's a point there. That was an interesting idea in Karnataka. Could be so interesting to have that in Paris. In the poor parts of Paris, have Joy of Learning festivals. Take the kids, man.
You call yourself a socialist. It's not socialist.
Socialism is another word for being a human being.
Yeah, it's humanist. It's just make the world better.
Well, yeah, exactly.
You know that the world socialists make people scared. For part of the people, they panic because they saw what happened in USSR. And they we don't want that. Or North Korea, but they are. And the other side, the right wing, they know how to promote the bad thing of the socialism. When I hear you, it's a bunch of good ideas who can work even here. How can we spread this humanity? You're working with your publishing company, who's called the Left.
Left Word.
How can we spread it? How can we have more Vijay?
No, we don't need more me. What we need is...
I want to be a small Vijay. I want to be Vijay Junior.
What we need is we need to be able... See, it's actually interesting. You're right, that the right wing tries to create fear and so on. But what I found in the last 10 years, let's say, after the war on Iraq, the destruction of Iraq...
What was your reaction on this war in 2003, I believe? What did you do against it? Did you do march? Did you do crazy thing? I don't know. You were in India back then?
No, I was already a journalist and I covered the war in Iraq. I went to Iraq in 2004 and 2005 for the Hindu newspaper in India.
We passed one thing. You went to school and you became a journalist.
I became a historian. I became a journalist. I've tried a lot of things in my life, but the thing that stuck, like I said to you, is storytelling.
Journalist.
I always want to tell stories. I'm in the middle of writing a novel now. I like the idea of when people hear stories from other parts of the world or what other people are doing, it makes them feel precious and important. What demobilizes people? One thing, I'm fine with social media. I don't have a problem. I'm not a 100-year-old grumpy guy who's going to, diss on TikTok or anything. But it is sometimes true that those forms of social media, the form, I don't mean the content, the form makes it hard to tell certain kinds of stories, those forms, especially stories that lift you up. You might see an interesting thing or whatever, but what do I mean by stories that lift you up? I'm interested when I'm, as a journalist, I go and report things. So yesterday I spent an hour and a half talking to my friend Salim, who is in Rafah, who's a health worker. And I was asking him, how are you doing? Where are you going to go from the Al Zarur neighborhood? When I spoke to him yesterday, we could hear the bombing. His feeling was that north of Rafah, towards Khan Yunis, the bombing had already started. But he couldn't know where because he's in Al Zarur neighborhood inside, deep in Rafah city. And what he was saying is, where are we going to go? He was telling me things. But what I found interesting is, and I wrote an article about it yesterday, what I found really interesting in what he was saying is he kept trying to ask me, well, where are we going to go? Because what I found amazing is he wasn't saying, oh, where are we going to go? He was like, no, where are we going to go? Like, can you check?
Can you check where they're thinking?
He was like, open your computer, check to see look at Google Earth. How's the coastal road? Can I go there? The indomitable spirit of the Palestinians in the middle of this Holocaust-like bombardment, they are thinking practically, where am I going to go? Can I get my kids out? I mean, over the course of these last 18 weeks, I've talked to so many Palestinians in Gaza who are like, can you help me get a visa? Can you figure out this? What happens here? Can we get out? Can we go there? If we stay here, what is it going to be like? Some of them saying, I don't want to leave Gaza because I know what the Israelis are like. If I leave now to save my soul, they'll never let me come back. This is 1948 again. That's what they're saying.
That's what they're doing, basically.
Exactly, but the Palestinians are aware, which is why nobody wants to leave, or at least many don't want to leave. What I learned as a journalist was, if I tell the story of that spirit, that human spirit, and somebody, young person sees that, they read that, they watch the video of it, the powerful sense it has for them. We want to make a world, Ramdane, where people understand solidarity, not in terms of I want to help you, but I want to accompany you. The Palestinians don't need our help. They will liberate themselves. They need us to accompany them. We have to put the price so high in Western countries that Western countries stop supporting Israel. The Palestinians will liberate themselves. Exactly what happened in South Africa.
We have to make this movement cool.
Yesterday, I had a drink with Françoise Vergès. She was showing me photographs. I was like, Françoise, write the story of your family.
Yeah, she has so much on her shoulder family-wise. The level is high.
It's high, man. I took a picture of Françoise with the daughter of the last Communist Party chief in Indonesia.
There's no communist anymore?
No, they were all killed in 1965. Her father was the last communist leader of Indonesia, Ibaruri Aidit and François Vergès.
They all killed in Indonesia?
1 million killed in 1965.
It's been called the largest unrecognized mass killing of the 20th century. The 1965 massacre of communists in Indonesia, a dark chapter of Cold War history.
At this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger.
You've been a journalist. 2003, America decided to go on war on Iraq. What was your reaction at that time?
Well, interestingly, already United States had started a war in Afghanistan in October of 2001.
Yes.
One thing I want to say about America. United States of America has one of the greatest destructive military forces on the planet. They can actually bomb a country that cannot defend itself. They can destroy everything, all the bridges, all the power lines, power plants, everything. They can destroy a country. What the Israelis are doing to Gaza, the United States did in Afghanistan. They just bombed everything.
In Iraq as well.
And then when the war started in Iraq, it was very clear. They called that bombing shock and awe, that they were going to bomb so hard that the Iraqis were going to get shocked, and then they would be in awe. They would think, oh my God, God is attacking us. This is like the Old Testament. God is coming to just destroy the planet. The awfulness of God, the awe of God.
But they have a pattern from that. They have Japan. They did it to Japan.
They did it everywhere. They did it to Dresden during World War II. Vietnam. I mean, the bombs dropped in Vietnam till today. I went to Vietnam. When you talk to people there, they will tell you, Ramdane, that we will not be able to grow vegetables, grains, fruit in this area for hundreds of years because it's simply polluted by Agent Orange and bombs.
And people are still dying with bombs.
Exactly.
People don't know that the most bombed part of the world is Korea.
Exactly.
The most bombed ever. Still now.
In fact, when the US was bombing the northern part of Korea before the partition, US General Curtis LeMay said that we're running out of targets. We don't have any more targets. And then they wrote, well, just keep bombing anyway. Bomb the targets again. Ruthless.
Is it nihilism? The only Nazis were nihilists like that. just like destroying for destroying, like with no plan. It used to be a plan, like a fake humanitarian, like let's bring humanity, human rights and everything. But it seems that right now they bomb for bombing. It's like a business.
Yeah, well, it is a business.
Yeah, it's a business.
It's a business. I mean, every time there's a war like this, when the war the genocidal bombardment of Gaza began, the profits of all the arms companies went up because they knew orders are going to go up immediately. So, yeah, of course it's a business. But there's something else. Many years ago, I interviewed the head of the CIA in the central part of the world, meaning he was the station chief in Tehran in the 1970s before the revolution. So he was in charge of the Arab world, he was in charge of Afghanistan, and so on. And his name was Charles Krogan. And I interviewed him after he retired, and he said something simple to me. He said, look, for us in the CIA, we have a basic understanding. If you have a hammer in your hand, everything looks like a nail. And you will just bang on everything. And so, sometimes, and we don't think about this often, is the United States has an immensely large hammer. It has the world's largest military. And if you have this big hammer in your hand, everything looks like a nail. You have a problem here, we're going to bomb you. We have a problem here, we're going to whack you. Years ago, I was talking to Noam Chomsky. Chomsky said the United States government...
You work with Noam Chomsky.
Yes.
You write books.
We've done 2 books together.
And how did you meet him?
In the 1990s, I wrote a letter to his office in MIT saying to him that, look, I'm working in a trade union in India. I'm doing a study of contract labor. And here's something I've written. And I sent it to him. And I was extremely surprised. There was a typed response came back from him. So over the years, we started corresponding more. I went to Turkey to cover, something to do with the Kurds in the southwest. And Chomsky wrote me a letter saying, be very careful. These are the kinds of things. There was a very loving, kind letter that he sent, giving me advice, some orientation and so on. And then I met him and I became very fond of him as a person.
How is it in life?
He's a very serious guy, okay? It's extremely hard. I've made him laugh a few times. You remember the song Gangnam Style? The South Korean song Gangnam Style? Oppa Gangnam Style,
From this area of Seoul.
Exactly. And then he says, Oppa Gangnam Style. And so we were at an event once and I introduced Chomsky. I said, Oppa Chomsky Style.
Oppa Chomsky Style.
He started laughing. It's very rare to get him to laugh. He's he's a very loving guy, but he's super serious. And it's been great working with him. Chomsky has an interesting opinion of the United States. He says the United States is like the Godfather, like a mafia don. The United States says, if you don't agree with me, I'm going to whack you. You don't agree with me, I'm going to whack you. Patrice Lumumba, you're trying to stand up and be equal to me, I'm going to whack you. Bang. Thomas Sankara, you think you can talk to me? I'm going to whack you. Bang. Mehdi Ben Barka, bang. Anybody who says, hey, listen, we have some ideas, we can do things, we don't want Coca-Cola. Salvador Allende, you're going to stand up and tell us you want to nationalize the copper? We're going to whack you. Boom. So Chomsky says it's like the Godfather. The CIA guy says to me, if you have a big enough hammer, everything looks like a nail. It's like the Godfather. So when the Iraq war was starting, one thing I knew for sure is they are going to destroy Iraq. And, they have been doing it since the 1990s, after the 1991 war, through the period of sanctions, brutal sanctions against Iraq.
Millions of people died.
Million of people, at least 500,000 children died because of US sanctions, and they admitted it. Well, interesting, Ramdane, when you think about Iraq is a really, really powerful and great civilization.
One of the oldest in the world.
One of the oldest in the world. Sumeria, between the Tigris and Euphrates River, the great cultures. Even today, when you walk around in Baghdad, you go to the river edge, the fishermen bring the fish and they roast it for you. And you can feel the depth of the culture of that society, great poetry, great art, the thinking, the intellectual life.
This part of the world is cursed.
Baghdad was sacked by the Mongols.
Yes.
Okay.
The guy was sacked non-stop for like hundreds and thousands of years, this place. Every time they just brief a little bit, someone comes, let's destroy it all.
Bang, boom.
People forget, but early 80s, Iraq was about to be on the 10 most rich country in the world. They were reaching it. because they were not like Saudi Arabia. They were spending money, doing schools, doing the right thing. And bam, they pushed him on the war on Iran. They said, oh guys, can you do the job for us? Can you attack them?
And in fact, that's an interesting story because that's like the mafia don. The Gulf Arab countries tell Saddam, we're going to pay you. You can be the hitman. You go and make sure Luca Brazzi sleeps with the fishes. You go and you hit Iran for us. You go do this. And Saddam, was like the underboss of the mafia. He was like, yes, boss, I'm going to go and take care of those guys for you. Bang, bang, or cut off the head of a horse.
Finally, they lost.
But they lost, man, because you know what? I tell you something, and I want a message to the Americans, to the United States. Don't mess with the Iranians. There's two people they should not be messing with, the Iranians and the Chinese, because, man, the high level of patriotic feeling, if they drop one bomb on Iran, the Iranians will say, destroy the whole country, we'll keep fighting, which is what they did against Iraqis. They just didn't stop. The Iraqis were using mustard gas provided by Germany, West Germany, Bundesrepublic of Germany, mustard gas thrown on the Iranians. The Iranians kept coming and saying...
Old stock from the First World War.
Old mustard gas.
Yes, from the First World War.
My friend Robert Fisk, who was a reporter for The Independent in the UK, an Irish reporter based in Beirut, Robert Fisk was on the Iranian side of the border. And Fisky tells a story of how... Once he was on a carrier of troops, injured troops, Iranians going back to Tehran. And he said, as we were going out of the station in the western part of Iran from the front line, the Iranian soldiers started coughing. They're coughing and coughing. And he said, suddenly we realized they were coughing up mustard gas. So he said, some of us ran along the corridor, opening the windows so that the air can be inside. Otherwise, they'd all kill themselves because they had so much mustard gas in their lungs. This is what the West has done to that part of the world, okay? They treated Saddam, he was an underboss. He wasn't acting on his own orders. Then they said, the underboss has misbehaved. We're going to go and knock out the underboss. But not just the underboss. We're going to destroy Iraq. And I tell you, I visited Iraq after the immediate bombing. The level of destruction in that country, not only in Baghdad, but in Fallujah, in Ramadi, the bombing was vicious. The so-called, what they call the Sunni Triangle. They bombed viciously.
And they created ISIS.
They created ISIS. And in fact, people should recognize that, when the Western countries bombed in the north to get rid of ISIS, when they bombed these cities in northern Iraq, Iraqis could actually run out of the city and run and hide in the countryside. When the Israelis started bombing Gaza on October, there's no place to run.
There's nowhere.
There's nowhere to run. I was thinking about this, that at least the Iraqis could run out of the city.
Ukrainian as well, they can run.
They can run and they can come to Paris.
And with no visa.
Yeah, no Syrian, no Afghan, no Iraqi,
no Somali,
no Palestinian,
no Sudanese.
No Sudanese can come to Paris like that and be given apartments and so on. The racism.
You know what they did? They asked the refugees who had places. They asked them to move out. They say, guys, move out. We don't want you to keep all these Sudanese and all the Afghans. Ask them to leave. We need space for the Ukrainian. It's very strange to choose between one refugee to another one.
But it's not strange. And that's the terrible part of our world we live in. Because what we live in is we live in an international division of humanity. Humanity is divided. There's one side of humanity, which is the privileged side.
Can you give me a rank? Who are the most important people on the planet?
Yeah, well, I don't need to give a rank. You can just talk to the Ukrainian government official who in the early days of that war, in February of 2022, said that, look at us, we are blue-eyed and blonde hair. He said it. He said, we deserve to be saved because we are blue-eyed and blonde hair. That's the oldest racist trick in the world. So this side of humanity, and it worked. This side of humanity, blonde hair, blue eyes. That side of humanity, the darker and darker you get, and the less light eyes. But I think that's the basis of the international division of humanity. It's old-fashioned racism. It's not some new kind of racism.
Nothing changed.
Nothing has changed on that score.
That's why we have to connect all the ground, from China, Asia, to Africa, to South America.
And we have to make people who are blonde and blue eyes into race traitors. They need to be traitors to their so-called race. They need to abandon the privileges. These things are important. We need to build a human struggle against the international division of humanity.
When you were young, you look clear for the people, especially when you're in the south. Calcutta, people are pretty dark. You are clear.
Well, my family comes from the northwest frontier, that part of northern, what is today in Pakistan.
You're Punjabi?
I'm Punjabi, but also from very much in the north of that region.
Close to Afghanistan.
Exactly. You have to remember that in that part of the world, all the invaders came through. My father used to joke and say, you know where our village was? I'd say, where? He said, if you come through the Khyber Pass, which brings you into Hindustan, you take a right turn, that's our village. So all the invaders, from Alexander the Great to the Mongols to the Safavid Persians, they all crossed there, turned right.
They stopped for curry and...
No, curry. They stopped to diversify our gene pool. That's what they did. So when you go to that part of the world, you see people with blonde hair, with blue eyes, with green eyes.
You have green eyes.
Well, because our gene pool was diversified by the Greeks, by the Mongols, Safavid.
You mix with everything.
When you go across that whole world from Morocco all the way out to Southeast Asia, the amount of mixing is incredible.
Procrastinophobic on Pseudo Radio.
Yeah. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Yeah. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Say it again, y'all. Look out. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Listen to me.
You go to Iraq 2004. Like you see the whole thing destroyed and everything. And you went back to India? You were living back then in India? You were in Calcutta?
No, I was working for an Indian newspaper. People in India were actually quite upset by what had happened in Iraq. Because India and Iraq have a very old relationship. You might know that in the area of Basra, in the south of Iraq, there were a number of Indian soldiers posted there during the British Empire. And in Basra, the cuisine is very related to Indian food. But there's also an old historical relationship.
It's not that far from India, if you see on the map.
Yeah.
People forget that Middle East, it's in the front of India.
Exactly.
A flight from Dubai to Islamabad, Pakistan, whatever, it's like 2-3 hours. People don't see how close it is to India.
Close, but also culturally close. Because, the fact of language, the principal language of Pakistan, the national language, and then the language of northern India, Hindustani, or what becomes Urdu and Hindi and so on, there's a lot of vocabulary from Persian, from Farsi. Because after all, in those days, Farsi was a little bit like what French was at the same time for Europe.
People don't know that Afghanistan speaks Farsi.
Dari, yeah, it's a form of Farsi.
Farsi, yeah, it's the cousin language. Iran and Afghanistan have almost the same language. People don't know that because they don't travel that. They don't speak to Afghan. I'm always asking to people, how many Arabs do you know? How many black people do you know? How many Afghan you know? Or how many Chinese? It's very funny because if you ask people, 90% of the French people don't know they have no one around them. They don't ask, they don't eat with them. They go to a ramen restaurant, they think they know everything about Japan.
But it's the same on the media. If French TV wants to get somebody to talk about China, they don't talk to somebody from China. They talk to somebody from the Sorbonne who's
who's based in China.
No, not even based in China. They may have read a few books or whatever. Yeah. It's pretty pathetic. Our cultural level of communication is really low.
You want people to talk more each other.
Absolutely.
How can we do that?
Well, look, in 1960s, there was an Iranian writer called Jalal Ali Ahmad. He wrote a book called Garib Zadagi, which means the bad breath of the West. Bad breath of the West infecting our societies. What Jalal Ali Ahmad wrote in that book is he said that, look, in Tehran, we know when a new François Sagan novel has come out, but we don't know the literature in India. We don't know what Indians are thinking or what the Chinese are thinking, what they are writing. We know what's happening in Europe. We don't know anything from anybody else. And this was written in 1962. That's when Garib Zadagi was written. Very important text. But my feeling is that this still happens today. Everybody knows when a new Taylor Swift album is coming out. Everybody all over the world knows Taylor Swift songs. Again, no disrespect to her. She's a young woman who's a singer, artist, whatever. But the fact is, people just don't know what the music sounds like coming out of, say, India, or what is the new pop music from China. Once in a while, these things break out, right? K-pop. Suddenly, it's a phenomena. Everybody wants a little piece of K-pop.
It's not true. It's just a part of the world.
It's a part of the world. Like pop, it comes here, gone, finished.
And it's funny sometimes when they say world tour, it's like 5 Western countries, they call it world tour.
Of course, because what's the world?
The problem is definition of the world. What's the world?
40 years ago, there was a famine in Ethiopia, and a group of US artists went into a studio in Los Angeles, and they sang a song which went,
We are
the world, we are the children. Who's we, man? We are the world? You are a group of very sincere, good people. I don't want to malign them. They wanted to help in some way, but they didn't sing a song which suggested that the world was out there and the world doesn't know who you are and it's complicated and you don't understand things and you'll be shocked to find out how we live and our world view is different. Our cultures are different. They are genuinely deep and old cultures. They are not new. They're difficult to understand and so on. It takes effort to learn to translate cultures.
And history as well. When you ask people, they know about the history of the Christian world and Western world, but they don't know at all about the history of India. We don't learn at school. Even Middle East, we know nothing. We just know when the Muslim came, that's it. We learn nothing.
Let's just stay on France for a minute, okay? France brutalized and colonized Algeria. Why isn't Algerian history centrally taught to every single child in France? Not just the Algerian children, but every single Tunisian history, the history of Syria and Lebanon. Everywhere that France colonized has a history before the French arrived. Before Napoleon came to Egypt, there was an Egypt. And I think it would be interesting for young French children to learn about pre-Napoleonic Egypt. That when Napoleon arrived in the 1790s, there was already in Egypt, man. It has a really old history, a deep and powerful and great history. And when Egypt tried to advance itself under the leadership in the 19th century of Muhammad Ali, for instance, then the British, later the French, decided to suffocate them. Any time that we have tried to stand up and say, look, we have a great past and we want to build, that past is our resource, we want to build from that past a future, they say no.
But now why Modi is working people? It's not for America.
No, not necessarily.
What's going on with India? What's going on with this worldwide Islamophobia? I don't get it. And no one is reacting. Like you can kill thousands of Rohingya and still think that Hong Lee, her name, Hong Song Lee.
Aung San Suu Kyi, yeah.
She's still like a cool person. I mean, she has lot of blood on her hand. It's very strange. You can kill Muslim, it's not a problem. Modi right now is killing thousands and thousands of Muslims.
Well, he is a genocidaire. I mean, he was the guy who oversaw the massacre of Muslims in Gujarat in 2002. At least maybe 3,000 Muslims killed then. He's a genocidaire, but he has never paid the price and he is now going to probably win the election again.
The next one?
Yes, most likely, because they inflamed the country with religious rhetoric.
Tell me the story about the farmers, this big revolution we had like 20 years ago, I think.
Well, no, just 2-3 years ago. Very large. I mean, it's interesting, Ramdane, when you look at the world's agriculture today, all young people are concerned about, what we eat, how animals are grown, where our food comes from. 40 years ago, India decided to liberalize the agricultural sector, basically open up the agricultural sector to money.
It was more controlled by the country.
It was much more controlled. For instance, the buying price, farmers grew something, the price at which they sold their products was controlled by the government in order to give the farmers a fair price. Because guess what? Farmers need to grow food. We can't allow farming to become speculation. And so there used to be protected prices and so on. 1991, they decided to cut all that. Well, farmers went into deep distress because more and more food became itself something to speculate on. The market in food speculation is enormous. People buying futures, and there's a value in having some kind of credit markets related to food, but not like this, not where you basically allow farmers to be bankrupted. In the United States in the 1980s, you had farmers committing suicide. That's why Willie Nelson and other musicians created these concerts called Farm Aid to raise money for farmers. It was already happening in the US in the 80s.
Give us your tired and weak, and we will make them strong. Bring us your far-run songs, and we will sing along. Leave us your broken dreams, we'll give them time to mend. There's still a lot of love living in the promised land, and room for everyone living in the promised land.
Farmers want to live with what they grow, what they sell.
They don't need begging money, but they do need price support.
But in India, you had also this big movement of people committing suicide because the seeds, because also the big corporate arrived. They had to buy the seed from the big corporate. The small farmers cannot afford. They had no money at the end. They start to commit suicide, but to large numbers.
Well, it's called the scissors effect. What happens with scissors? Both sides cut you. So prices of everything you need to buy goes up, and then your own price that you can sell the products goes down. So you are being cut by both ends like scissors. 500,000 Indian farmers committed suicide between 1991 and 2014. 500,000, okay? That's incredible. 500,000 farmers committed suicide. And many of them committed suicide by drinking the pesticide, drinking the fertilizer, which was killing them. One side of the scissors, the prices of these things had gone up. So about 10 years ago, the farmers' movement, some of them led by socialists, communists, farmers' organizations.
Started where?
They mainly started in northern India, in Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, in Maharashtra, and so on. They began to do protest actions, march to the city, march to the parliaments, and so on. These were small state-based movements. But then, toward the end of the pandemic, hundreds of thousands of farmers descended on Delhi in opposition to some bills put forward by Modi's government. One of the bills would make the marketplace where farmers sell their product completely privatized. And farmers said, if you do that, you're going to Uberize farming. You're going to make farmers like Uber drivers. Absolutely no control. They'll be dominated by an app, literally. So just like an Uber driver, drives around looking for somebody to match customer to driver through the app, well, this is what they were going to become, is basically Uberize agriculture. And the farmers said no, because this is going to kill us even further.
Well, the people can put the price they want, like if they buy the cheapest with the app.
Well, but the thing is, that's the other problem, is that it's not even just people, it's the big corporates. They are the ones who can come in and dominate the marketplace. And the government was handing over these private marketplaces to big corporations. Those were sweetheart deals. So the farmers said it's either we protest or we die in greater numbers or people stop farming. So they went in large numbers, and it's one of the few times in Modi's government where he had to retract the bill. He had to take it back and say, okay, we're not going to do this to the farmers. And Ramdane, what's interesting is Mr. Modi comes from a tradition which doesn't like to lose. When they lose, they want their revenge. And so in the period after the loss of the struggle to the farmers, they've been taking their revenge by arresting journalists. My colleague Vijay Prashad was arrested on the 4th of October, faced terrorism charges effectively, and is going to be in jail for a long time. They're not really going to give him his chance to defend himself in a court. Since October 4th, he's had hearings, but they haven't been about the substance of the charges. Vijay Prashad, the 76-year-old man, is basically going to spend some time in jail. Why? Because he led a media company called NewsClick, which reported the farmers' movement with honesty, talking to the farmers, putting their views out there for people. He's going to be... So this sense of not only can we not tolerate defeat, but we cannot allow those who defeated us to get away. This is like a crazy world we live in. Journalists getting persecuted.
It's not a democracy, India?
What is a democracy? Okay, what is a democracy? We're sitting in Paris, France. Okay, this is the city that had the storming of the Bastille. This is the city that had the Great French Revolution. This is the city that had the Great Paris Commune in 1871. What did the armies do to the communards? Massacred them all.
80,000.
80,000, threw their bodies into shallow graves. Then they built that enormous church on top of their bodies effectively, right?
Yes.
Sacré-Cœur was built as a monument of the counter-revolution against the people's dreams. And now what happens? Somebody black walking on the street in Paris, the police treat them democratically? I don't think so. When there are protests, who remembers the Algerians killed and thrown in the Seine, their bodies thrown in the Seine?
17th of October 61.
17 October 61. My God, what democracy, man. The idea of democracy has been destroyed by them. We have to rescue democracy. I don't listen to people who say democracy itself is a hypocritical thing. Democracy is a beautiful idea, but they have corrupted it. They have taken it. They talk about freedom. They talk about democracy. They talk about human rights, but they don't mean it. That doesn't mean the idea of democracy, the idea of freedom, idea of human rights bad. These are good ideas. We have to defend them. We have to fight to make them real in the world. Right now these words are just posters. They are just sitting on a poster. We have to bring it to life.
And how?
How do you bring them to life? By people organizing to defend their right to this. I mean, how did we get the 8-hour day? How did we get laws that prevented children from going to work in factories? Is that generations sacrificed themselves to fight, to defend against child labor, to defend against being in terrible working conditions. Lots of people sacrifice their lives for that. Now they're taking all that back. Uberization, for instance, the making of everything into short-term contracts and not really taking care of people at all. This is part of our society now. We have to fight them. We have to imagine a different way to live. I mean, for God's sake, $32 trillion is sitting in offshore tax havens. $32 trillion. We need to bring that money back to use. Make it useful. We can easily provide in every street in the city like Paris. Every block should have a medical clinic with a nurse that if you feel sick, you can just go and see the nurse. You don't have to go to a hospital. We need to have more art. Why is it that in every single neighborhood in a city like Paris, you don't have a community center? Young children like you and when we were young, we could go in there, we could play ping pong, we could draw paintings.
Stop doing nothing on Procrastinophobic.
You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions. The revolution will not show you pictures of Nixon blowing a bugle and leading a charge by John Mitchell, General Abrams, and Spyro Agnew to eat hog maws confiscated from a Harlem sanctuary. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised. The revolution will be no rerun, brothers. The revolution will be live.
I think we're going to finish it. You're here. What do you want to say to the future? What's your feeling for right now? Honestly speaking, I'm not very optimistic. The planet is warming to a level that we never expected. Wars are everywhere. No one cares about human rights. We are actually witnessing the hypocrisy of the Western world where I grew up. What's your feeling for the future?
Actually, there's too many things happening that make me confident. For instance, let's take the war against the Palestinian people. It's pretty amazing that a government like South Africa, a government of the South, from the global South, took the Israelis to the International Court of Justice, and that all the countries that defended the South African claim, almost all came from the global south, all of them. Bolivia, Turkey, Indonesia,
Chile.
and so on, Chile, all of them come from the global south.
Not an Arabic country.
Well, that's another discussion. Someday we can have a discussion about the Arab world. I used to live in Beirut, a modest understanding of what's happening there, but also, let's just say the Arabic-speaking people are heartsick about what's going on in Gaza.
Like 99.5%.
Exactly. It's the governments that are a problem. And one day we can talk about that, Ramdane. But the fact is, things are changing. People don't want to take orders and be bullied by the West anymore. In fact, they say it directly. They say, those days are gone, man. We want to help. We want to help save the world. You want to destroy the world. You know what people in Africa say to Western diplomats? They say, you guys are good at destroying bridges. The Chinese are teaching us how to build them. And we are more interested in building bridges than destroying bridges. So I see some hope.
You see it in Africa, that.
Of course, I see hope everywhere. I mean, look, there is a problem. Right now, as we talk, the Israelis are destroying the Palestinian enclave in Rafah. Bombing Rafah itself, an immense crime, what's happening just to Rafah, because they told the Palestinians on the 13th of October last year, go south, it'll be safe. Having gone south, 1.3 million people gathered near Rafah, a small city designed for maybe up to 200,000 maximum. People are about 22,000 people per square kilometer. It's an incredibly congested area, and they're just bombing from the skies. It's difficult to find hope when this is happening.
Gaza was before the war the most dense city in the world.
Exactly. We wake up in the morning and I want to cry now.
Every morning.
Because of this,
Me too,
right?
Me too.
Yeah, so it's difficult now, but we have to engage. And I have friends that call me. Yesterday, a friend called me, he's a medical worker, called me from Rafah. You got to engage, talk to people. Exactly. We got to be in it. But even though it's hard to feel hope now, man, you got to push yourself to feel hope.
You need, and trust me, this war finally opened the eyes for a lot of people who didn't care about Palestine. And the whole generation, the young people, it's insane. They're all switching to that movement because TikTok. And TikTok is Chinese, it's not Instagram.
That's true. And Telegram, which is what? From
It's
the Gulf
Russia.
Arab states or whatever. You're right. Millions and millions of young people are refusing to go home. My children are on the streets protesting every day, shutting down roads, demonstrating. They say two things. I feel powerless and I feel powerful. And I can tell you, I want to send a message to Benjamin Netanyahu. I want to tell him that you miscalculated. Israel is going to lose this war. Why will it lose this war? It has lost a generation of young people in the global south and in the global north. In France, in Britain, in the United States, a generation of young people will never forget you, Netanyahu. We will find you. You think you can go on holiday in the south of France? We will arrest you. We will send you, if not to the International Court of Justice, we will send you to some court, universal jurisdiction. You will not be able to rest. You think you're winning this war. You are winning nothing.
Yes, but we said so about Bush and one did nothing.
Wait, there's still time. We have not forgotten them.
Yes, never.
We have not forgotten them. Tony Blair, Karl Rove, Donald Rumsfeld, George W. Bush, Condoleezza Rice, Colin Powell, we have not forgotten any of you.
On that, we are done. Thank you very much, Vijay.
Pleasure, pleasure, pleasure.
You just listened to Procrastinophobic with Ramdane Touhami.